Control your screaming brat, or I'll have you and your baby removed from this aircraft immediately. That was the first sentence the cabin heard. Not a greeting. Not a polite request. Just that sentence. Sharp, cold, humiliating. It came from a uniformed flight attendant standing in front of seat 1B, staring down at a young black mother cradling her 9-month-old son. The baby, Caleb, was crying. Not screaming, not throwing a tantrum. Just the tired, fussy sobs of an infant adjusting to the pressure of a delayed takeoff. The mother, Ava Brooks, looked up, her cheekbone already turning red. Yes, red. Because the flight attendant, Claire Morgan, hadn't just shouted. She had slapped her. And the cabin fell silent. For a split second, no one breathed. Then came the phones. The subtle shuffle of pockets and purses. The glint of screens lighting up. Click. Record. Go live. Claire didn't flinch. In fact, she adjusted her blazer with confidence and looked around like a sheriff restoring order in the Wild West. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. We'll have this situation handled shortly. Ava didn't respond. Not with words. Not with outrage. Not with threats. She just gently rocked Caleb, her hands soft but steady, her expression unreadable. But if you looked closely, really looked, you'd see something behind her calm. A flash of platinum peeking from her diaper bag. A phone notification lighting up. Skylink HQ, emergency board call, 3 minutes. She tapped the screen once. Declined the call. She wasn't just any mother. She wasn't just any first-class passenger. She was the CEO. And Claire Morgan had just slapped the woman who signs her paycheck. But no one in the cabin knew that yet. So they kept recording. Kept whispering. Kept assuming. And Ava. She waited. Because she knew something they didn't. And in exactly 3 minutes, the entire flight, the crew, and 178 passengers would find out what happens when power and prejudice collide at 35,000 feet. No one asked her if she needed help. No one leaned in with concern to see if the baby was sick, or if the mother was overwhelmed. No one offered a bottle of water or a word of kindness. Instead, they whispered, "She probably doesn't even belong in first class. I paid over $1,000 for this ticket. This is unacceptable." Across the aisle, a man in a navy blazer adjusted his AirPods and rolled his eyes. "I didn't pay for this flight to listen to a daycare." A woman in pearl earrings muttered, "This is why I always fly private when I can." She didn't bother to whisper. It wasn't just the baby's soft cries, they seemed to be judging everything about her. The way she wore her hair in a sleek bun. The way her blazer hugged her waist like it was tailored. Even the quiet confidence in the way she sat, back straight, never flinching. But to them, Ava Brooks was simply a problem to be removed. Claire Morgan stood at the front of the cabin like a hero receiving applause after restoring peace. She offered a tight smile to the nearest passengers. One woman smiled back. A man nodded approvingly. In the age of instant outrage, no one paused to consider what had just happened. A passenger had been physically assaulted in front of dozens of witnesses. But instead of shock, there was justification. Finally, someone said what we were all thinking, someone whispered behind row 3. Tina Lopez, a college student flying home from spring break, tapped her phone and began a live stream. She didn't mean to go viral. She just wanted to capture what she felt was something wild happening. Okay, so a flight attendant just slapped a black mom in first class. And y'all, she's not even yelling. She's light, scary calm. The live count ticked up. 3,000, then 5,000. But the comments weren't on Ava's side. Discipline. Finally. Why can't these people control their kids? Entitled mom gets what she deserves. Claire noticed the stream and smoothed her uniform, stepping into her role like an actress on stage. "This is a safety issue," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If passengers can't keep their children under control, we have protocols. We have rights. The rest of you paid for peace and comfort. And I promise you'll get it." People clapped. Ava looked down at Caleb, who had finally settled against her chest, thumb in mouth, eyes closed. No one asked her anything. They just decided who she was. And who they thought she wasn't. Claire Morgan had dealt with difficult passengers before. She prided herself on being firm, especially with those she labeled as entitled types. People who thought they were above the rules. And in her mind, Ava Brooks checked all the boxes. Blacked. Yeah. Dressed too well to be flying commercial, let alone first class. Holding a baby, looking composed, not apologizing. It didn't sit right with Claire. She marched back down the aisle, still fueled by the cabin's approval. Every step was confidence. Every word rehearsed. "Ma'am," she said again, this time sharper. "I'm asking you to prepare to deplane. You've disrupted the cabin, and I will not allow this flight to suffer further delays because of your behavior." Ava looked up slowly. Not flustered. Not afraid. Just calm. Too calm. Her voice was steady, soft but impossible to ignore. "My name is Ava Brooks. I am in seat 1B, as assigned on my boarding pass. And I have complied with every instruction from your crew." Claire scoffed. "Don't play that game with me. I've seen it before. Fake first-class upgrades, attitude, pretending to be someone you're not." She leaned closer. "People like you always try to cheat the system. And I don't care how fancy your handbag is. You and your little situation are leaving this aircraft." Ava tilted her head slightly. "Are you sure you want to continue this conversation?" Claire's eyes narrowed. "Oh, is that a threat now? Ma'am, you don't scare me. You don't get to flash a nice watch and think that means anything here. You're not special." But she was. And that was the problem. Because Claire couldn't see it. Wouldn't see it. The way bias works, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it wears a uniform and hides behind protocol. Ava didn't need to threaten anyone. She didn't need to raise her voice. She simply reached into her bag to retrieve a bottle of formula for Caleb. That's when the platinum card slipped halfway out, reflecting soft light off its custom-brushed surface. Claire caught a glimpse, but didn't bother reading it. She saw the shimmer and rolled her eyes. "Nice prop," she muttered. But that wasn't a prop. It was her executive identification. Custom issued to Skylink's CEO and her family only. But Claire didn't notice. Because her mind had already made its decision. And sometimes, when you believe you're the highest authority in the room, you forget to ask who signed your paycheck. Claire stormed back toward the galley, eyes flashing. Her hands moved fast, grabbing the cabin phone and punching in the direct line to the cockpit. "Captain Hayes, this is Claire in first. We've got a situation. Disruptive passenger in seat 1B, refusing to comply, aggressive, possibly attempting to fly under false credentials. Infant involved." A pause. "Copy that, Claire," came the reply in a deep, steady voice. Has she raised her voice or physically resisted crew instructions? No, but she's combative, passive-aggressive, playing games, acting like she's untouchable. Captain Ron Hayes sighed. He'd been flying for 22 years, long enough to know when a situation could spiral. But he also trusted his crew. "Do you recommend removal?" Claire didn't hesitate. "Yes. Let's remove her before this gets worse. She's already delayed us nearly 10 minutes. "Understood," he said. "I'll notify ground security. Proceed with caution." Claire hung up and turned to her fellow flight attendant, Jason, who had watched the entire encounter from 2 rows back. "Back up me on this," she snapped. Jason hesitated. "Claire, she hasn't done anything threatening. The baby's calm now. Maybe just let her be." Claire shot him a look. "Are you serious? You saw her attitude. That's exactly how things get out of control. We let this slide, and every passenger with a kid thinks they can walk on board and do whatever they want." Jason didn't respond. She didn't wait for him to. Turning to the intercom, Claire made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. A non-compliant passenger has created a disturbance in first class. Airport security will assist shortly." There it was. The judgment made official. In the rows behind Ava, murmurs broke out. One man chuckled under his breath. "Knew it." A woman leaned over to whisper. She tried to pull the "I belong here" act. Even Tina, the live streaming student, paused. Her phone was still rolling. The view count climbing fast. But something about Ava's stillness, her restraint, started to feel less like fear and more like strategy. Back in the cockpit, Captain Hayes keyed the ground frequency. "Gate B32, this is Flight 928. Requesting security presence for passenger removal. Infant involved. Crew reports ongoing non-compliance. Roger that. 928. Ground team mobilizing. Back in seat 1B, Ava adjusted Caleb's blanket and quietly reached for her phone again. A notification blinked across the screen. Skylink Emergency Ops. Live feed request. Enabled. Ava smiled faintly. Let them come. 2 minutes later, the front cabin door opened with a soft hiss. 2 uniformed airport security officers stepped into the plane, their belts heavy with radios, gloves, and restraint cuffs. Behind them, 2 plainclothes federal air marshals followed, eyes scanning the cabin with practiced efficiency. Their presence shifted the mood instantly. Whispers died. Phones tilted higher. The lead officer, Officer Jameson, spoke with authority. Captain Hayes, we received the request. Please identify the passenger. Claire stepped forward quickly, pointing with a flat palm toward Ava. Seat 1B. Her name's not confirmed. She's been disruptive since boarding. Refuses to cooperate. The baby's been crying non-stop. She won't move. Ava didn't blink. She looked up at the group calmly, her hand resting gently on Caleb's back. The taller marshal, Agent Rivera, approached with a soft tone, different from Claire's sharpness. Ma'am, we understand there's been some tension on board. We're here to help resolve things peacefully. Can we speak with you for a moment? Ava nodded slowly. Of course. The cabin held its breath. Phones were still rolling. Tina's livestream ticked past 9,000 viewers. The comments were growing faster than she could scroll. Some were cheering for the takedown. Others were starting to ask harder questions. Why is she so calm? Wait, she hasn't even raised her voice? She looks like she's waiting for something. Captain Hayes leaned against the cockpit doorway, watching. Claire stood tall behind the officers, her arms crossed, confident this was the moment she'd reassert control. Agent Rivera lowered his voice. Ma'am, if you have any credentials or information that would clarify the situation, now's the time. Ava looked directly into his eyes. I'll need 5 minutes, she said, steady as stone. I won't delay further. I just need 5 minutes to make a call. Claire exploded. No, absolutely not. She's had enough time to manipulate this entire flight. She's stalling. Rivera glanced at his partner, Agent King, who looked uncertain. Officer Jameson added, Ma'am, refusal to comply may lead to physical removal. Ava remained seated, her voice even. I understand your position, but before anyone lays a hand on me, I suggest you check who I am. Rivera hesitated. And who is that, ma'am? She smiled politely. You'll know, in exactly 3 minutes. And with that, she tapped her phone, once. The live feed from Skylink headquarters activated silently in the background. The phone didn't ring. It connected instantly. A man's voice came through the speaker. Calm, firm, deeply authoritative. Ava. Is everything all right? Ava adjusted Caleb gently in her lap, then turned her phone face up on the tray table, voice clear and composed. Hi, Marcus. I'm on Flight 928, Skylink Airways. There's been an issue with a flight attendant. She slapped me. They're trying to remove me. Silence on the other end. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Just silence. The kind that precedes impact. Then came the answer. Just 5 words. Which gate are you at? Claire blinked, suddenly thrown off. Excuse me, who are you talking to? Ava ignored her. We're still at LAX. Gate B32. Flight hasn't taken off yet. Another pause. Stay seated, the voice said. I'll handle this personally. The voice belonged to Marcus Brooks, chairman and majority shareholder of Skylink Holdings. The man who owned the airline. The man who had just been listening, live. Agent Rivera's eyes widened slightly. He wasn't just hearing a complaint anymore. He was hearing a reckoning. Claire leaned closer, still in disbelief. Wait a minute. That voice. The entire cabin seemed to lean in as the realization washed over them like a wave. Tina's livestream viewer count spiked, 17,000, then 23,000 in seconds. Someone whispered, "Oh my God. That's the CEO." Ava looked up at Claire, her expression unchanged. Not smug. Not angry. Just still. "I asked you earlier if you were sure you wanted to keep going," she said softly. Claire stepped back. "No. No, you're bluffing. This is just some trick." But she could feel it unraveling. The silence in the cabin was no longer about judgment. It had turned into something else entirely. Recognition. Recognition that the woman holding a sleeping baby in seat 1B wasn't just a passenger who got lucky. She was the one person on this plane who outranked everyone. The owner's wife. The head of operations. The hand behind every decision this airline had made for the last 4 years. The baby's pacifier dropped to the floor, and a flight attendant rushed to pick it up, hands shaking. Ava didn't speak again. She didn't have to. Because for the first time since the confrontation began, everyone else finally went quiet. The screen changed. What had been a simple phone call was now a full video conference. The feed opened to a sleek, glass-walled boardroom at Skylink's global headquarters. A row of executives sat in silence, eyes focused, waiting. In the center of the frame stood Marcus Brooks. 6'3", impeccably dressed. No tie, just a navy suit, open collar, and eyes that made grown men fumble their sentences. He wasn't just the CEO. He was the man whose signature approved every contract, every paycheck, every security policy, and every single person currently standing on Flight 928. His voice came through the phone speaker, calm but icy. "This is Marcus Brooks, chairman of Skylink Holdings. Who exactly laid hands on my wife?" The entire cabin froze. Tina's livestream viewer count exploded past 30,000. Agent Rivera stepped back instinctively. Officer Jameson straightened his posture. Claire went pale, her mouth slightly open but with no words to offer. Captain Hayes, still watching from the cockpit entrance, cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Mr. Brooks, this is Captain Ron Hayes. We were acting on crew recommendations. The situation was never verified," Marcus cut in sharply. "And now, it's being broadcast to the world. Are you aware how many people are watching right now?" Hayes said nothing. Claire took a step back. Her confidence, once ironclad, now cracked beneath the weight of her mistake. "I had no idea who she was," Claire blurted. "She didn't say anything." Marcus raised a hand on the video, signaling her to stop. "You didn't ask," he replied flatly. "You didn't ask who she was. You didn't ask why she was calm. You didn't ask what her infant needed. You assumed. And then you slapped the mother of my son in front of a cabin full of witnesses." A gasp swept the rows of passengers. Someone whispered, "She's not just the CEO's wife, she's the mother of the air." Ava reached over and adjusted Caleb's blanket. He was fast asleep, completely unaware that his mother had just revealed herself as the most powerful person in the air. Marcus wasn't done. "Captain Hayes, all further actions on this aircraft are suspended immediately. No one moves my wife without my direct authorization. Ground control has been notified. This flight is grounded until further notice." The silence was so thick, you could hear the fans humming overhead. And in that moment, the true face of power wasn't yelling. It was calm, unshakable, and terrifying. "Legal," Marcus said into the boardroom mic. "Play the cabin audio from initial boarding through the incident." In the aircraft, the cabin speakers crackled. Passengers glanced at one another. Phones kept rolling. The livestream surged past 42,000 viewers. No one knew what they were about to hear, until they did. The playback began with ambient sounds, the shuffle of carry-ons, murmurs of passengers settling into their seats, a few baby cries, normal for any flight. Then came Claire's voice. "Control your screaming, brat, or I'll have you and your baby removed from this aircraft immediately." Gasps filled the cabin, not from the recording, but from the real-time passengers now hearing those words played back in sharp, undeniable detail. The playback continued. "I don't care what scam you pulled to get that ticket." Another pause, then the unmistakable sound of flesh slapping flesh. It echoed through the speakers. Claire's voice again, more condescending this time. "People like you always try to upgrade illegally." The words hit harder than the slap. Then came the worst of it. "Your baby daddy isn't going to save you from federal regulations." Even in a world flooded with viral outrage, that sentence felt like poison. Captain Hayes's voice followed in the recording, speaking with indifference. "Go ahead and remove her. We can't delay any longer." When the audio ended, the cabin was deathly still. Claire was no longer standing tall. She was hunched near the galley wall, visibly trembling, mascara beginning to run. Captain Hayes had lowered his head, one hand over his mouth. Agent Rivera looked down at his notepad. Tina's livestream caught it all. Her voice cracked as she whispered to her viewers. "This just turned criminal." Marcus's voice returned, colder now. "This recording is admissible as evidence under federal aviation law. You've all heard it. You've all seen it. I want every person on this aircraft to understand something." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. When people in uniform weaponize their authority against passengers based on assumptions, it is not just a mistake. It is a violation. And today, that violation was committed against my wife, with my son in her arms. Ava looked around the cabin. No anger. No smugness. Just clarity. She had said almost nothing since this began. But now, the truth was speaking for her. Loud, clear, and permanent. By the time the cabin audio finished playing, the entire country was already watching. Phones buzzed. Notifications poured in. #Skylink scandal was trending on Twitter. Cable news channels broke into regular programming with a developing story alert. Breaking: flight attendant assaults airline CEO's wife. Incident captured live. The live stream viewer count ticked past 51,000. Within minutes, news anchors were quoting exact lines from the cabin recording. Online forums lit up. Reddit threads exploded with eyewitness breakdowns. TikTok stitched Tina's stream with reaction videos. And then came the legal community. Aviation attorneys, civil rights experts, crisis PR firms. Everyone weighed in. Claire's words had gone viral. Her face, once proud and rigid, now plastered across headlines. Skylink staffer faces assault allegations after racist confrontation. Federal investigators respond to mid-flight civil rights violation. Back at Skylink HQ, the boardroom erupted into action. Phones rang non-stop. Legal teams worked in real time. Public relations scrambled to prepare official statements. Marcus remained calm in the storm. "Every passenger on that aircraft is now a witness," he said into the mic. "Our liability exposure is rising by the minute. But this is no longer just about one flight. It's about culture, accountability, reform." Captain Hayes tried once more to salvage something. "Anything. Mr. Brooks, perhaps we can speak offline and discuss a way to handle this discreetly." Marcus's face darkened. "You want discretion?" he asked. "Then maybe you shouldn't have greenlit an unverified removal request. You had an infant on board, a mother, and a cabin full of recording devices." He turned to the marshals. "Agent Rivera, you are now observers in a federal investigation. No further physical engagement with my wife or child is permitted. I've already contacted the FAA, DOT, and DOJ. This plane will not move until legal protocol is followed." Passengers shifted in their seats, fully realizing what they were part of. Not a delay. A defining moment in aviation history. Claire stood in the galley, her confidence shattered. Her actions, once protected by the illusion of authority, had been stripped bare by exposure and evidence. No amount of uniform or protocol could shield her now. Ava hadn't needed to raise her voice. The truth, and the entire world, had done it for her. And the fallout had only just begun. The fallout was swift, ruthless, and absolutely necessary. Within 10 minutes of the audio being played and broadcast to a growing audience of nearly 60,000 live-stream viewers, Marcus made the decision. "Effective immediately," he said into the mic, "Claire Morgan is suspended pending federal assault investigation. Captain Ronald Hayes is relieved of command for gross negligence and violation of passenger protection protocols." The words hit like a bomb in the cabin. Claire's eyes went wide, then glassy. She looked around for someone to defend her. No one did. "I was following procedure," she stammered. She was rude, she wouldn't move, "You hit her," Marcus replied. "You put your hands on a mother holding an infant. That is not procedure. That's a felony under Title 49 of the United States Code." Agent Rivera stepped forward calmly, not with aggression, but formality. "Miss Morgan," he said, "please gather your belongings. You'll be escorted off the aircraft and transferred to airport authorities for processing." Claire's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her hands trembled as she reached for her flight bag. Every move was being filmed, captured from every angle, even by people who had applauded her minutes earlier. She was no longer a flight attendant. She was a case number. Ava watched her without malice. There was no satisfaction in her eyes, only clarity. Claire had made her choices. Now came the consequences. Captain Hayes stood still, jaw clenched. He was a man who had flown thousands of hours, led dozens of crews. But in one decision, he chose to believe assumptions over facts. Loyalty to crew over accountability to passengers. Marcus's voice was firm but restrained. "Captain Hayes, your license will be reviewed by the FAA. Your history of misconduct settlements will be unsealed, and any pattern of enabling discrimination will be addressed under federal oversight." Hayes didn't argue. He simply removed his cap and placed it on the jump seat. "I didn't know," he whispered. "You didn't ask," Ava said gently. "That's the difference." The walk of shame that followed felt longer than any runway. Claire and Hayes exited the aircraft under escort, past passengers who avoided eye contact, past live streams that would follow them forever, and past a baby who, now fast asleep in his mother's arms, had unknowingly brought down 2 careers. The cabin door closed behind them, and history took note. When the cabin door sealed behind Claire and Captain Hayes, a silence lingered. It was the silence that follows revelation, the kind that fills a space when everyone realizes they just witnessed something irreversible. But Marcus Brooks was not a man to let chaos define the legacy of his company. In that moment, he shifted from furious husband to strategic CEO. "This cannot happen again," he said firmly to the boardroom camera, now broadcast live to media outlets covering the event in real time. "Not on Skylink. Not on any airline." He turned toward his legal team. "Effective immediately, we are implementing the Family Protection Protocol. Every passenger traveling with a child under the age of 2 will be assigned a dedicated cabin liaison, not to control them, but to support them. Mothers, fathers, caregivers will not be made to feel like threats." He didn't stop there. Within 72 hours, all Skylink flight crew members will begin mandatory bias recognition and de-escalation training. Failure to complete it means loss of certification. No exceptions. And they were just getting started. It could have ended with silence. Jade and Jordan could have moved to coach that day. They could have put their phones away, accepted the injustice, and told themselves it wasn't worth the fight. That maybe this was just how things were. But they didn't. Because somewhere along the way, someone had taught them that dignity doesn't depend on where you sit. It depends on what you stand for. What happened on that flight wasn't just about first class. It wasn't just about race. It wasn't even just about airlines. It was about power. Who's allowed to speak? Who's believed? Who's given the benefit of the doubt? And who's expected to prove they belong, over and over again? The Carter twins chose to respond with clarity instead of chaos. With record instead of rage. And that decision didn't just protect them, it protected people who would come after them. People who might never know their names, but who will sit in their seats with a little more confidence, because someone before them refused to be quiet. Jade put it best during a panel at a university in Boston. "We weren't brave because we fought. We were brave because we didn't back down." That's a lesson for all of us. You don't need millions of followers. You don't need a CEO for a parent. You don't even need a live stream. What you need is presence, awareness, and the courage to document what others ignore. So here's our invitation to you. If you've ever faced discrimination while traveling, or witnessed it, don't stay silent. Record responsibly. Speak calmly. Share your experience when it's safe to do so. Because your voice matters. Your presence matters. And together, our voices create pressure. Pressure builds accountability. And accountability brings change. If this story moved you, share it. Talk about it with your friends. Use it to start a conversation with your kids. Post it, comment on it, tag the people who need to see it most. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. Here, we tell stories that expose injustice. Stories that show how calm, strategic resistance can change not just policy, but culture. Hit that notification bell. Because justice needs witnesses. And sometimes, the next witness is you.